This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
We welcome you to the World Awakenings podcast. Before we start, we'd like to tell you about a special ebook written by the show's host, Carl Gruber. The 3 Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. The concise 32-page 3 Pillars ebook will teach you how to become a successful and consistent co-creator of your life path with the law of attraction. Yes, you can manifest the life you truly desire, and the ebook is absolutely free. Simply go to Carl's website, carlgruberlifecoach.com. That's KARLGRUBER lifecoach.com. Click on the header title About Me and get the free download today. Carl Gruber's free ebook, The 3 Pillars, will positively change your life.
Yes, folks, it's that time again. It is time for another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. This is episode number 21, and as usual, some of the finest teachers of spirituality and metaphysics in the world, authors. And today I am very, very fortunate to have this lovely lady on, and this is Fiona Williams. And Fiona is in the Great White North up in Calgary, Canada, and such a beautiful town it is. We were just talking about that. Mm-hmm. And Fiona, thank you so much for being gracious enough to come on the show today.
Oh, thank you so dearly for having me. I'm so grateful for the work you do and for the opportunity to share this very powerful message.
Yeah. And I really, and we are blessed to have you here. And let me just tell the listeners and the viewers a little about you. You're an author. You have 2 kids' books, My Mind book, which you were nice enough to send me a PDF of, and I've been reading that, and that was beautiful. And What Do I Do with a Negative Thought, another children's book, and also one forthcoming adult book, Your Mind is Your Life. And on top of that, she's a certified life coach. She's a clinical hypnotherapist, a facilitator of the A.C.I.M, if it appears.
There it is.
yeah, disappeared. And you also did I see that you're a Reiki master too?
No. I have my level 1 Reiki, so, not a master.
You do know some Reiki, though. That's it. You're an intuitive and spiritual counselor and coach, and you do some online coaching and courses. And this is phenomenal. And let's just dive in first of all on these books. The one that I read. Let's start with the 2 kids' books that are published.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners and viewers about it?
Absolutely. Well, my mind book came about, actually my husband's son was living with us at the time, and he was 24 and, just trying to find his way and, struggling with some things that you would see normally, anxiety, a low self-esteem, things of that nature. And, it came to me that if he had learned how powerful his mind was as a child, then maybe he wouldn't be as prone to these. And if they had come up, maybe he would have felt more stronger to get through them and more capable, as opposed to feeling like a victim of them and a victim of his world. So he was my inspiration. Also, my nephew, he was 9 at the time. He had horrible anxiety, and only for 9 years old to have such crippling anxiety. He also was my inspiration. So I was just surrounded by my nephews and my niece, and then my stepson. I was just noticing that children weren't being taught how powerful they really are. And if they at least got an idea of how powerful they are, then maybe they could start to take some control of it and start to have some respect for their minds. And then, who knows, when they're older, maybe they'll be more inclined to start something like A Course in Miracles, just kind of plant the seed, put the honey in the ear a bit.
Yeah, that's interesting about a youngster with a crippling anxiety. I hope you've hooked him up with our friend Corinne Zupko, who has a book, From Anxiety to Love.
Yes.
But what I saw of your, the book that I saw, the children's book, My Mind book, that's where you come from with your teaching, is on the mind and the power of the mind. And you did this very simply in it's on Fearless Books, which is the same publishers, Gary Renard, D. Patrick Miller, which is very cool that you're on that. But it was so simple, laid out in teaching children how to use their mind in a right-minded way, according to the principles of love and forgiveness and teaching of the A.C.I.M.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So I have a copy of it right here, just so people can see. That's my mind book. And yes, so, I've loved the mind for as long as I can remember. I've always had a great respect for the mind. And when I was taught by my mentor, Dr. Tim Hall. He's a clinical hypnotherapist. He's the former vice president of the Alberta Children's Hospital. And I had started working for him. He needed a receptionist, and I started working for him, and he was teaching me about the importance of the mind just through hypnosis and also with life coaching. Life coaching uses a large amount of our subconscious mind to help empower us. So I was learning all about the importance of the mind, and he was feeding that need that I had to learn more. And Maya said hello. And in that, Dr. Tim Hall, he started teaching me about the laws of the subconscious mind, that, thoughts grow stronger the more you share them, and through repetition and so forth. And then I remembered reading about laws of the mind when I was reading the text of the course, when I was 20. And it just sparked something within me. It was sheer inspiration. So I grabbed my concordance of A Course in Miracles and I looked up laws, and I went everywhere in the course where it says, this is a law of the mind. And I pulled those laws out, and then I made them easier for children to understand in my mind book.
And I'd have to say you were very successful. You definitely did that. So
thank you.
And what about the adult book, Your Mind is Your Life? Can you tell us anything about that? I know you have it's soon to be published.
Yeah, well, I'm on the second round of edits. So I'm working with Patrick Miller again, of Fearless Books. He's holding my hand through the process again, and there's no one else I'd rather work with. And so it's really the adult version of my mind book. So I'm going way deeper into the laws of the mind. I'm also clarifying the difference, in the clarification of terms in A Course in Miracles. There's the first definition, mind, spirit. And if you read that, Jesus presents for us that there's the wrong mind of the ego. There's the right mind where we hear spirit. There's the decision maker mind, which is between these two. And, Eckhart Tolle would describe that as the observer mind, where I'm aware of both love and fear. And now I can proceed with my choice. And we're taught in A Course in Miracles that this is the most powerful position we have in this world, is that of the decision maker. And I think it is so important for us to know it. In fact, I think it's vital. And then through our consistent use of the right mind and the right-minded principles, we go home to the one mind, which is known as enlightenment. So I cover more of that in Your Mind is Your Life. Well,
those people who may or may not be students of A Course in Miracles, it is, as Cindy Laura Renard told me, it's a mind training book.
It
training
is.
You in right-mindedness and that goes back to, I noticed in the kids book, My Mind book, you offer something called the switch, which is choice. You
Yep.
have a choice in the moment to, do I want to continue feeling bad, or do I want to continue feeling good? And you have the will to make a choice.
Absolutely. You are not a victim. You are not a victim of the world. And as Gary Renard would teach us, right, that there is no power in being a victim. So when you get to the point, which we all eventually do in the linear fashion of time, we all get to the point where this is too much. I've had enough, and there has to be a better way. And in that regard, you are done being a victim. And if you notice that you are a victim, that's okay. And you start to put yourself back in the power position of, there's something better that I can do with this. I can implement true forgiveness. I can choose to calm down. And instead of reacting and saying words or doing actions that I might regret later, I'm becoming more aware of the thought system that I'm feeding into. So I love it. It's an incredible position to be in. And I respect that we're all not always there, but it is something that we can learn to grow and develop. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful what you're teaching there. It's interesting. I would like to find out a little bit more. How did you end up deciding to become a certified life coach? I'm a certified life coach too, but I noticed you went to the Edgar Casey?
Yes. Well, that was for my clinical hypnotherapy.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I went to the Edgar Casey Association.
That was
for Research.
Hypnotherapy, but what organization with the life coaching?
That's Erickson College, who are out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And yes, so through the mentorship of Dr. Tim Hall that I used to work with, I wanted those credentials. And it's actually a bit curious. I used to work for an oil company. I love geology, so it's a bit of a geology nut. But I had grown weary with it. And I had just finished reading Gary Renard's book, The Disappearance of the Universe. And I was crying. Like I was so just not challenged in my work that I was bored a lot. So I was reading Disappearance of the Universe underneath my keyboard. And when I had completed it one day at work, and I was just crying, just tears of gratitude, because I loved it. I resonated with it so much. And, it helped me understand the Course more. And the Course just became mother's milk to me. And so I literally went like this. I had my hands open like this. And I just said, Holy Spirit, what would you have me do? What would you have me do? Because I know it's not this oil company job, right? And I got up to go to the bathroom to fix my makeup and compose myself a bit. And on the way, the term life coach entered my head.
Oh.
I had never heard of the term before.
Really?
And mind you, this is before I started working with Dr. Tim Hall. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so when I came back from the bathroom, I Googled life coach, and sure enough, all these programs came up and I was learning more about it. And I was like, this is so therapeutic because it's empowering. And that was something I resonated with so deeply, was that we're the ones who are doing this unto ourselves. That's the key to a salvation in A Course in Miracles, is that I am doing this unto myself. And what I resonate most with life coaching is that, we're asked powerful questions. We're never given advice as the client. We're going within, we're connecting with our right mind and letting spirit speak through us. And what resonates with me? What's my value system? What's important? Because it's so important that we work within our own world with what we're used to, and then spirit can help lift us up and expose us to more and open our minds more so we can learn new things. But it's all done very gently. That's what I love about life coaching, is it's gently done within your model of the world.
Well, you talked earlier about a lot of people have victim mentalities, and honestly, if you think about it, most of the world seems to have a victim mentality. Do you run into that with some of your coaching clients?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's well, thankfully with, because I do spiritual life coaching. So thankfully the people I work with already have a spiritual point of view. So they're already kind of on board, like, hey, I think I'm doing this to myself. So that helps. But there are definitely areas of their lives they're like, oh my goodness, like I am playing into that drama. I am playing into that conflict. And here I thought it was being done to me. So in some areas, they're very aware that they're doing it to themselves. And in other areas, they definitely come to the realization, like, oh my goodness, I'm participating.
Well, and I think that those people who perhaps don't have any spiritual awakening yet, or some form of enlightenment, they've lived most of their life in a victim mentality that this is being done to me. It's not my fault. But when they finally come to that understanding, it is. It's like the light bulb was turned on in their head, and all of a sudden they go, wow, you mean I'm not a victim? I can choose to walk a different path?
Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? And I remember reading in Gary's book, The Disappearance of the Universe, one of his teachers said, I'm not an advocate for arguing. And I was like, I was like 20-ish, and I was like, hang on a second. I don't have to participate in arguing. Like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to play that role. And it was so liberating. Total aha moment for me.
Well, and too, when you're faced with a situation where you could join an argument or pursue it that way, I think for me, where I've gotten to the point, I'm just not interested in going down that path anymore.
Totally.
The quote human urge, the egoistic urge to be right. I'm going to be right. I'm going to argue this, and I'm going to show them. It just never pays off. And in the long run, your urge or need to be right, which probably led to some form of guilt or shame feelings later on you go, man, that really wasn't even that important. Why did I pursue that?
Yeah, exactly. What within the ego's thought system is really that important, and it can come across quite petty, and definitely fear-based. It's just the ego's thought system is designed to keep you in this world. It just perpetuates fear and conflict. It's just a cycle. So you have to hop off of that cycle. You have to switch out of that ego mind into your right mind in order to get a solution, because you can't find an adequate solution, one that will genuinely work within the ego's thought system, because the ego's thought system is one of conflict.
I was wondering, would you be able to define for our viewers and listeners, what is right-mindedness?
Absolutely. So right-mindedness is essentially a form of thinking that upholds the atonement principle. So in A Course in Miracles, we're taught that this entire physical world, this ego-based thought system, came about from a tiny mad idea. That tiny mad idea is, I thought I could leave my source. I thought I could separate from him, and I think that I did. And the one idea, the true idea that undoes all of that is the atonement. Atoning means undoing, which we're taught in the 50 Principles of Miracles in the Course. And so we're undoing the ego's thought system. And the one idea that undoes that is that I never left God. I never left my source. So right-mindedness would be any type of thinking like non-judgment, the application of true forgiveness that upholds the atonement principle. So it doesn't feed into the ego's thought system. It doesn't judge it. It doesn't analyze it. It doesn't try to find the sense in the nonsense. It simply just says that this is not true, and therefore I don't need to react to it. My reality is that I am mind, and I am one, I am spirit, I am one in God, in the God mind. And so that's what right-mindedness upholds.
That's beautiful. Nice explanation. I really appreciate that. And I have to apologize. My cat is back here playing or something. So if you guys hear some dinging and banging around, and there's a reason why I call her Maya Diva.
Yeah, you're getting some moral support.
Oh, gosh, remind me not to make her producer of this show.
It'll be all about her.
Yeah, she would like that. But what's what I find interesting about you, Fiona, is you say that you're an intuitive intuitive and spiritual counselor and teacher. You obviously must have a natural intuitiveness since you were young. Did you realize that?
Yes. I've been reading auras since I was about 10 years old. And always had, what I can say is a deep compassion for what people were going through. If someone, as an example, were mean to me in school, I would deeply recognize that I was sensing something was askew within, and it was not an opportunity for conflict. Not saying I was always awesome at that. Of course, I'm having the human experience and I get into the stuff too, but I was keenly aware of people's emotions, their feelings, where they were coming from, and not always essentially why they're doing it, but I was getting a feeling of their feelings, very empathetic. Yeah, feeling them out.
I was about to say, another word, of course, is empathy.
Yeah.
And my friend Terry Wilson, who's been on a guest on this show, he is quite the empath, and he said it can really drag you down personally if you go through a day where you're around a lot of negative energy and things, that he literally has to come home and lay down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I like to protect myself before I go out. But, now, I've been a course student for a long time. So, I just kind of stick to places that I feel are more of a higher energy to me, not as a judgment to other places, but, you just kind of go to where you're vibing. So, just you have to kind of be picky about that. And that's okay. And if for some reason you are in a place of, lower vibes, it just, I do protect my energy, I protect myself, and then enter into it with, I ask the Holy Spirit to see this for me, judge this for me, and I envision a pillar of white light going all the way through me, and I know that I'm one in God, and I know that whoever I'm seeing is one in God as well. So it makes the ego very transparent. and so you don't want to participate, and you just kind of remember the truth.
I love the way that you walk through your life with the Holy Spirit right there with you. And, and I've been a long time A.C.I.M student, and it is hard sometimes, even knowing what we know as we go through our day and the casual negative conversation of people around us, or somebody on the road cuts you off, that type of thing. And, I still could drop a couple 4-letter words from my language.
Spiritual people swear. It's all good.
And it's it would be nice to drop that, but like I said, I mean, the fact, once you do learn some of these right-minded principles of A Course in Miracles, you, in those moments, we talked about choice. You have the choice to change your attitude, your mindset on the spot, and you don't have to dwell and vibrate in that negative spot.
Exactly. I mean, if we all reflect gently and just as Jesus would teach us in A Course in Miracles, just to look at the ego's chaos and move beyond it. So when we are honest with ourselves, what has the ego ever brought you? And having compassion for others, what does it bring them? Nothing, literally nothing. They're more than that. You're more than that. I'm more than that. So why am I upholding this? And it does happen. Like, I know it does happen. Arguments, tiffs, all of that happens. But once you become aware of it, there's that choice, there's that decision maker mind. How am I going to proceed? And in some occasions, you're going to be able to snap into that awareness quick.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. And in some occasions, it's going to be easier to snap out of that and become aware, like, oh my goodness, I'm feeding into this. But other times it's not so easy, and you need to cry, and you're going to get angry, and and that's okay. But it's not something to feel guilty about, right? That's just the ego sneaking in the back door. Just recognize, okay, this has shown up for my healing. I'm now aware that I was participating. So how am I going to move forward? Now that I'm calmer, now that I feel more chill, how am I going to move forward?
Yeah, and I think that, even being a facilitator, teacher, teacher of right-minded thinking, unless you're an ascended master, you'll never stay up here, 100% of the time. We're within the dream of this life, and this life presents contrasts and issues, and we're up here, and then all of a sudden we're down in the valley. But when you understand what you're talking about, then you realize when you're at that bottom, it's as you use the term switch, you can change that switch and bring yourself back up. But a lot of people don't know they can.
Yeah, exactly. And the ego loves that, right? The ego loves that, right? The ego paradox, right? Where the ego would tell you that you're small, you're limited, you're powerless, you're hopeless, you're vulnerable. Yet the ego uses your own very powerful mind to keep itself alive. The ego is just misthought, and it's kept alive through your belief. And I love that, because once you learn, hey, you're kept alive through my belief. What if I practice not believing in you? And it is a practice. It's a habit you're creating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what if I practice right-mindedness? What if I remembered that I'm one in God more often? What if I connected with my source more often? Right? So it's a habit.
Do you ever get from maybe even just casual conversations, and when you bring it up talking about this type of thing, maybe with an acquaintance, do you get people who confuse the pure non-dualistic spirituality of A Course in Miracles with religion, because they hear the words God and Jesus, when in truth, A Course in Miracles has absolutely nothing to do with religion?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That comes up. If I'm doing like an expo or things like that, advertising my services, absolutely you get that. So it's a religion. It's like, no, it's not a religion. Yeah, totally. But you quickly switch it and just go, no. And I love this explanation, right? You just have to, on top of learning how to undo the ego and remembering who we truly are, on top of this huge thing that we've got going on, the last thing we're being asked to do is learn another language. So, of course, Jesus is going to use the language that we're already familiar with, right? So terms that we're familiar with, and then just gently redefines them.
Right. And that is the beautiful thing. And again, Gary Renard, who I've had the opportunity to meet a couple times and interview.
Yeah, me too. I love him. Yeah.
He's very, very adamant that is how the Holy Spirit works with us, in order to help us raise our consciousness, is working with us with something that we understand. It's like Gary's two ascended masters, Arten and Persa, who appear. For him, it's something he can relate to.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And that's what I love about A Course in Miracles. I teach an introduction to A Course in Miracles, and I teach another class that delves further into it. And I always, remind, students and sometimes myself, right? Like, the Holy Spirit knows me, knows what's going to resonate with me, knows what I need to heal, knows what I can do, knows when I'm strong enough, even if I don't feel strong enough because I'm identifying with the ego mind. The Holy Spirit's like, no, I've got your back. You can do this. The Holy Spirit knows you because the Holy Spirit is in your right mind, right? And one of my favorite Course in Miracles teachings is that, do you not know that to fight the Holy Spirit is to fight yourself? It is you. It's one in you.
And, I think, too, sometimes people get confused. Well, how do I know if the Holy Spirit's talking to me, or how do I know if the ego's talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, the ego always speaks with urgency and always speaks first and the loudest.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to decide, well, is it the Holy Spirit or the ego talking to me, then how do you feel? If you feel good, then it's the Holy Spirit talking. And then if there is something where you're not in alignment with it, and then it's the ego. But it takes a while to learn that.
It does take a while. And, and there's that awareness aspect again. How do I feel, right? When you have a thought and then you start to get a feeling around it, then you can really recognize that. And so that awareness aspect is very important, I feel. And the Holy Spirit is always going to bring peace, which is what Arten and Persa teach us in Gary's books, right? Is that you'll know that the Holy Spirit is speaking to you because there will typically be that feeling of peace. The Holy Spirit speaks to us mainly through ideas, and and other signs for sure, but mainly through ideas. And the ego speaks first and speaks loudest, as because it's vulnerable. It knows that on a dime you can change your mind and it is gone. So it has to fight for your attention. I always kind of describe it as like Bart Simpson, right? It's like, look over here, look at me, pay attention to me. And so right, and the ego's talking to you because you start to recognize, like, it wants me to uphold conflict. It wants me to feel small.
Yes.
Yeah. So you start to become aware of that as you
That's
practice.
the first comparison of ego into Bart Simpson. I like it.
Totally.
Well, and too, once you start becoming aware and enlightened, the ego will actually start fighting harder and becoming more vicious because it realizes it's about to be vaporized back into the nothingness that it is. It's been pointed out many times that A Course in Miracles students, their life, weird things and crazy things start actually happening even more in their life because the ego is fighting hard while throwing more at you and trying to distract you from that.
Absolutely. And that's why it's vital to connect with the Holy Spirit when you begin your day. Switch over to your right mind, get connected. And again, develop that practice of connecting with the Holy Spirit more often and asking for guidance if you feel you need it. Just developing those habits because, you're going to get bombarded. I have faced so many challenges since I've become a course student, but man, you feel stronger. Each and every time you knock one challenge out of the park, you forgive it, you rock it out. Something else comes up, and that's not to scare people. It's not always like that. It's just certainly been my experience. But man, you feel stronger. But not only that, I've found that it's not as heavy. Like 15-year-old Fiona to face some of the things that 35-year-old Fiona had to face. Wow, that would have been such a challenge. So I've honestly found myself when I've just been really in the doldrums, I'm so grateful for true forgiveness. I'm so grateful for the Holy Spirit. I'm so grateful for the Course, the truth, Jesus, God, these beautiful reminders in our lives that there is a better way. Just the gratitude goes through the roof because, man, to face it without true forgiveness, wow.
And I really like that term. There is a better way. I've actually recently written a blog post called "There Has to Be Something Better."
Yes,
and it's very similar vein to that.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out more. What drew you to hypnotherapy?
Well, like I said, I always loved the mind. I thought, when I was younger, maybe I'd be a psychiatrist or psychologist. So I suppose I've always had an inkling towards it. I was brought up as a child. I was reading Edgar Cayce books.
Wow.
My mom had a collection of them. So I was reading books about Edgar Cayce and Ruth Montgomery.
Wow.
So that was my childhood. And I loved it. So it very much helped me connect with the idea of spirit and these characters. Jesus and Mary and so forth. So that really resonated with me. And of course, Edgar is all about the mind. And I love that because his connection with spirit was so strong. And so it inspired me. It's something I always resonated with. And then, when I had that moment in my office at an oil company when I was like, Holy Spirit, what would you have me do? And I looked up life coaching and I was like, oh my goodness, this is all about the mind. And I actually reached out to a friend and it was just, I knew she's older than me. She's actually my sister's best friend's mom, and she's an A.C.I.M student. So I actually just emailed her, just titled it, subject line, A.C.I.M. And I said, I'm thinking about leaving my job. I don't know what to do. Can I connect with you? And so her and I had a chat, and she's like, oh, well, I like Holy Spirit, just that synchronicity. And she's like, well, I work with a Dr. Tim Hall who started his own program about life coaching and hypnosis. So do you want to work with him? And so I was very well supported by Spirit on this path to what the mind truly is. I was resonated with Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters. I went and saw him and reading his work about the mind. So I guess it's just always been part of me.
I have this picture in my mind of you asking Holy Spirit, what would you have me do, and getting up to go to the restroom. And while you're walking there, I was, Fiona, can you see life coach?
Totally, exactly. Well, it was so funny because I just got this feeling of lightness throughout me, and I was like, "What the hell's a life coach?" I'm looking around for someone who might have an answer, and I was like, "Just Google it when you get back to your office." And yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the hypnotherapy. How does that work?
Well, so I actually now use it because I create meditations and so forth for my, like I have an online program, I have online programs, so I create these meditations. So I actually use the beginning trance work of, what I was trained in hypnosis, and I use that at the beginning of my meditations to help people go deeper and feel safer. And then, I'll bring in some A.C.I.M principles in the meditation to help them connect. So I use it with my clients in helping them essentially just get the ego out of the way and to get more into their subconscious mind, just where the ego is more subdued. So that's what I like to do. So I'm not actually taking any hypnotherapy clients, but I use the principles more in my relaxation and meditative work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. That sounds
it's
excellent.
fun. I love it.
So, what is next for Fiona Williams? I know the book. Are you just going to continue on this path? Do you have any big webinars or anything that's coming up? Or?
Well, I want to finish the book. Absolutely. I'm very, very excited for that. I'm excited to hear what Patrick has to think about it. And then I am doing a retreat in Nelson, BC in May. And a woman, she got accreditation for teaching the course through the Circle of Atonement. So I'll be doing a 3-day retreat there on healing. So that's very exciting. Yeah, because I had a very powerful healing experience. I healed from Meniere's disease using A Course in Miracles.
I think I remember we had mentioned off camera here that you and Corinne Zupko had done a webinar together, and I think I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was powerful. And so a lot of people might be familiar with my experience because, man, when it was done, I was going to share that. It was incredible, and people deserve to know that. So I'm excited to share more of that message. I have the Your Mind is Your Life program. I've already done, it was a year-long program. I've smushed it down to 6 months. And so the 6-month program is starting on New Year's Day. So you get online classes, online sessions with me, group sessions, where I go further into the mind. So I explain the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, and then the other minds that I mentioned, the wrong mind, the right mind, the decision maker mind, and the one mind. And then I go deeper into, your relationships, the body, the ego's laws of chaos, how the ego's thinking, how it shows up in the world, right? So even a song repeating in your head is the ego at work. So I go more into the ego's thought system, how it shows up, because as Jesus teaches us in the Course, these laws of chaos we're the ones who made them, and they simply need to be recognized, looked at gently, and then move beyond. And I just think that's such an incredible teaching. I don't need to participate, I can move beyond it. So I really hone in on that in my upcoming program, Your Mind is Your Life. So I'll be doing that and going to the A.C.I.M conference in May.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So just teaching.
But I'll tell you what, Fiona, I'm just sitting here looking at you, and it's just so awesome because, I always talk about if you're going to be the real deal and really, really, as David Hoffmeister says, go down the rabbit hole of being a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles, you have to walk in the integrity of right-mindedness and walk the talk that you talk. And boy, you do that so beautifully. Thank you. Thank you very much. That means the world to me. That warms my heart. Thank you so much. Well, yeah, I'm just sitting here and go, wow, this girl's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean
well,
that.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's application. It's application. It is through, when I was in my early 20s, I had a bout of anxiety. And I think it was partly because I wasn't very challenged in my job, and I was starting to, just the ego made a home for sure. And, I recognized that I was doing it to myself. I knew that what I was anxious about was not a genuine threat. I was keenly aware I was doing it to myself. And, I read The Disappearance of the Universe. I read The Power of Now, which my mom used to overcome PTSD, which she got from the war in Belfast. So, my mom, both my parents have really shown me that our minds are critical. And my mom really showed me that Eckhart Tolle really vibed with her. And she just pretty much swallowed that book, The Power of Now. And, you know, she says she's followed him since before Oprah found him. So, you know, I was taught that the mind was so important also by my mom. Yeah. So it's incredible.
There's so many beautiful teachers in the world. And you know, we're going to wind down here because I don't want to keep you much longer, but I always ask my featured guests, why now more than ever do you think that the population of the world is awakening to all things spiritual and enlightening?
Yeah, well, I think it's safer. I think the world is safer. You're not fighting for, well, not all of us are fighting for our basic rights. Not all of us are fighting for simple things like food and water. So our basic needs are predominantly, for most of us, being met. And so when you are being taken care of in that regard, those primal needs, then it's easier to, you know, think and question and wonder and apply. So I think the world's conditions are safer than what they used to be, for sure. So I think that's why I think people are like, okay, I can come in, I can give this a whirl, and it's not going to be as difficult, you know. And also I think it's important for us to remember that, you know, the great sleep that fell upon Adam, that's gone. The great falling asleep is gone. It's the great awakening. It's now the time for the great awakening. So wake up. I
like that. Yeah. Wow. And that is great. I and also because the global connectedness, obviously, the internet being a big thing, everything is immediate. Where, you know, a century ago, you and I couldn't have had a chat like this and reach people anywhere around the world. With this podcast, World Awakenings, my host that I put the podcast on the web, I can go in and see what countries and how many times people in those countries, and it's amazing. You know, I mean, I've had people watch and listen to the show in Kazakhstan, in Bali, in New Zealand, in France, and many people in Canada, anywhere, Russia. I've had people in Russia and Thailand, and this is one of the reasons the modern technology is allowing the awakening to happen exponentially where it never could before.
Absolutely. And it is, you know, in that duality, you know, of course, the internet can be used for either ego or spirit, but used for spirit, it is an incredible thing. We are so connected, and it's nice to feel our connectedness, right? Because at the level of the mind, we are all one, we're all connected, and definitely the internet can help us feel more of that connection. It's something to be grateful for.
Well, we've been talking to Fiona Williams, an amazing author of kids' books and adult books, a certified life coach, a clinical hypnotherapist, and of course, a wonderful teacher of A Course in Miracles, an intuitive, and on and on and on. And my friend from Calgary, Canada, thank you so much, Fiona, for being on World Awakenings. What a blast. And I'm sure that our viewers and our listeners are going to get a lot of positivity out of this.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so dearly, Carl, for this opportunity. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya the cat.
Yes, and thank you, Maya.
All right. Take care. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Carl.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in each and every episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that all of the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things metaphysical and spiritual, and just how they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment everyday life. Much love and light to you, my friend. Thank you for tuning in.